It's Victoria, one of your co-hosts of the Let's Regret podcast, and I want to welcome you to this mini-sode. Today I'm going to talk about regret. And why did we choose the idea of regret or guilt or letting go as the theme for our podcast? And did you also know that there are different types of regret? So this is what we're going to talk about today. I'm curious what you feel when you hear the saying, no regrets. Think about it right now. How does that make you feel? That no regrets attitude. It seems to be around a lot. And it seems to carry the weight or the association with that means I'm strong and I'm not weak and I'm living my life to the fullest. But this is how I feel about the no regrets attitude. It's like a false bravado. And when we do that no regrets attitude, rah, 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 I'm strong, I can do anything, we actually aren't being honest with ourselves because it's okay to not feel strong. And it's okay to have regrets. Because when we acknowledge that we have regrets or guilt, then we acknowledge that we have the capacity to learn, that we can learn from our mistakes, and that we can survive failure. We can survive feeling let down. We can survive those things and we can come through on the other side and we can thrive. So when we go through life with that kind of false bravado, no regrets attitude, we aren't teaching ourselves how to deal with the heavy emotions. We're actually learning to ignore and avoid them. And we're actually saying that they aren't important. And the reality is that they are important. That's where we learn. That's where we learn about love. When we feel loss, when we feel grief, we learn the importance of love and how much it meant to us. That's how we learn to let go, through anger, through sadness. And also that's where we learn conflict resolution, through anger, through sadness, through guilt. We learn how to connect to people. We learn how to say sorry. We learn how to put our ego aside. We learn self-reflection. We learn so much from those heavy emotions, and we are supposed to feel them. We are designed to feel them. When we are children, when we are babies, when we feel anger, we feel sadness, we come out crying, come out going, what is happening? I'm in this new bright world and I don't like it. We learn what we like and what we don't like through those heavy emotions, our boundaries, needs, and wants. And that's why we practice letting go. And that's what we're doing in the podcast is we're actually letting go. Because if we hold on to those heavy emotions or we ignore them and pretend they're not there, at a point when we can no longer avoid them, they will come out. It's called discharging. They will come out. We might yell at someone. We might cry uncontrollably. We might trip on something and be out of balance in our body. We might wallow in them for too long, sending ourselves into a downward spiral of worry. We might even feel shame. And shame is the one emotion that we're not supposed to feel. I call it a makey-uppy emotion. It's the made-up emotion that society's created because we actually don't learn anything from shame. Shame is, I'm a bad person. You're not a bad person. Nobody's a bad person. Everybody's worthy. And you can't really learn when you start to think I'm a bad person. That's why we want to feel guilt instead, right? Guilt is I did a bad thing. I'm going to learn from it. But let's talk about regret. What is the actual purpose of feeling regrets? Research shows that regret is the second most common emotion we experience as humans. The second most common emotion we experience. What's the purpose? Connection. We usually regret something about connecting with another person, connecting in community, connecting to ourselves, or just connecting to our life. That's the purpose of regret. And that can actually lead to, when we know how to move through it, when we know how to let it go and not wallow in it, that can actually lead to a life that feels more fulfilled, more satisfied, more connected, more psychologically rich. And I also just want to tell you, do you know what the first emotion is? The most common emotion that we experience as human beings, it's love. So they go hand in hand, regret and love. They teach each other regret and love. So we should feel it. But today what I want to tell you about is that there are 4 types of regret. And the reason that I like doing this kind of research or having this kind of knowledge, I call it knowledge of knowledge, is because when we know about ourselves, when we know about how our brain works, how our body works, how our physical being works, or how our emotional being works, we can move through emotions in a healthier way. We can talk to ourselves in a healthier way. So all this knowledge that I throw at you is so that you can connect to yourself and to others in a more easeful and connected way. So here's the 4 types of regret. The first type of regret is a foundation regret. These are the regrets where we regret our failures to be responsible. They usually start with if only. And here's a big one. If only I had started my retirement savings plan earlier. If only I had started saving money earlier. If only I'd bought the house when the housing market was cheaper. If kind of responsibility ones. The second type is a boldness regret. The boldness regrets are regretting the chances that you didn't take. Let me say it again. Regretting the chances or the opportunities that you didn't take. If only I had taken that job 20 years ago. If only I'd gone on that vacation when that person offered me to go on that vacation with them. If only I'd done this. So they also start with if only, but they're about the opportunities we didn't take. And we often go into a thinking of if I'd done that, my life would have taken a completely different path. That's your boldness regrets. Then we have the moral regrets. This is a big one. And these ones can be hard to admit. And before I say this, I want to say we are not perfect. Nobody's perfect. So we all do have moral regrets. Those are the regrets where we regret the time we had the chance to take the high road and we took the low road. And everyone has taken the low road at some point in their life. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. You should not shame yourself about it. When you admit the moral regret, when you acknowledge it, you learn from it. And these are actually one of the biggest learning opportunities because we learn how to treat people. And then we can say to ourselves, I'm not going to do that again. Next time I'm going to stand up for that. Next time I'm going to acknowledge what my beliefs are, what my needs and wants are. We can really learn from our moral regrets. They usually sound like this: if only I had done the right thing. Once I saw somebody push someone in the schoolyard when I was 8, and I wish I'd stood up to that bully, right? If only I had done the right thing. And the last type of regret is connection regrets. You neglect the people who maybe matter to you most because you think they're going to be there. Maybe you neglect the people who help establish your sense of wholeness. Maybe there's people in your life that are right there saying, I want to be your friend. I want to support you. I want to be here. I want to be there for you. But you're spending energy on other people that maybe are toxic. And then later on, you look back and go, wow, that person wanted to be there for me and I didn't accept it. If only I'd reached out. If only I'd spent more time with my kids. If only I'd spent more time with my partner, my husband, my girlfriend instead of at work. If only I'd taken more vacations from work so I could connect to people, or stopped working at 5 and left at 5 so I could have dinner with my family. Those are the connection regrets. And let me ask you something. Out of those 4 regrets, which one do you think you will be thinking about at the end of your life? I know that sounds morbid, but we can learn from them. If we learn from those regrets now, then we can act differently, take action differently in our life moving forward. The reason we do this podcast is to acknowledge our regrets, to acknowledge that we all have similar regrets. Have you ever listened to an episode, and I hope you have, and gone, yes, I did that exact same thing. Yes, I feel the exact same way. As either me or Shadow or one of our guests that are on, I totally relate to that. We all have similar regrets. We all have things that we've done that we need to let go. And letting go is the key here. Letting go isn't about forgetting, repressing, or dismissing everything that's happened to you as if its impact doesn't matter. Because everything that's happened to you matters. It's made you who you are. Letting go, saying it out loud, getting feedback on it, talking through it, just like we do on the podcast. It's about accepting what's happened along with its impact, learning what you can from it, and then finding peace. and taking those lessons with you to move forward. And that is why we do the podcast, everybody. So I hope you've had an aha moment. I hope you can maybe start to label your regrets and understand them and say, okay, it goes into this category, it goes into this category. I can maybe easier let go of this, or this one I need to work on, or maybe I need to follow up with a person and say I'm sorry to them. This one, maybe I say, okay, I need to let it go, the guilt about not having enough money in my savings account, but I can start saving now. I can start putting $1 a day aside or whatever it is. So you can kind of start to compartmentalize those regrets. And that is a form of letting go too. How am I going to work on them? And if you're interested in knowing more about letting go, I do offer a letting go class on Zoom live every Friday at 6 Eastern time. All the details are in the show notes. And I also just want to say to you, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting me and Shadow. We really appreciate you. We fund ourselves to do this. And if you want to help support us, there's so many ways that you can. You can give us a 5-star review. You can leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts. We have a new system. It's called the Buzzsprout system. And if you click on it in the show notes, you can support us financially. And we appreciate you so much in doing that as well. We love our supporters. And tell a friend. Help us with the algorithm. Tell people to listen. We appreciate your support so much, everybody. And we hope that this podcast is making a difference for you and making a difference in the lives of as many people as we can possibly reach through this podcast. So thank you so much. You are worthy just by being a human being on the face of this planet. You are supposed to be here. Appreciate that, and know that you are worthy just because you are. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
This episode of Let's Relieve Regret was produced by Shadow Ball and Victoria Muir-Bercia.
Editing by me, Victoria Muir-Bercia.
We are an independent podcast supported by you, our listeners.
If you think this podcast sends a valuable message, you had an aha moment, or learned something new about yourself, help us realize our goal of reaching as many listeners as possible.
We encourage you to take action and support us right now by choosing one of the following options.
You can easily support us by
following us on Instagram at relieve.regret.
Tell 2 friends.
Leave a 5-star review on whatever app you're listening to us on.
Leave a tip at coffee.com/Let's Relieve Regret podcast. That's ko-fi.com/Let's Relieve Regret podcast.
Join our conversations in the Facebook group, Let's Relieve Regret Podcast.
Find all this information, all the links, and more in the podcast notes. Okay, bye.
Bye.